Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, Mike Lindell sent me a note yesterday. He has a special for the 6-piece towel set, $25 when you use promo code Joey. Just go to mypillow.com, use promo code Joey. You'll get the $25 offer on the 6-piece towel set, and I promise you, these will be the most comfortable, the most absorbent towels that you own. mypillow.com, use promo code Joey, get the 6-piece towel set for just $25. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson Bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson Bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
President Donald Trump was in Asheville, North Carolina yesterday, made some pretty big campaign promises. We have the details for you and some highlights of that. Fox News released the results of its latest presidential poll, and the results are looking pretty much the same as a month or so ago, with Donald Trump hanging on to a small 1-point lead, but a lead nevertheless. We have the latest details on that for you today as well. 2 new graphic videos were released showing the moment a Ferguson, Missouri police officer was violently knocked over by a suspect during a Michael Brown protest last Friday, an incident that has left the officer in critical condition, fighting for his life. The suspect is a delegate to next week's Democrat National Convention. Think his credentials will be revoked? White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday said that she is proud to speak for the Biden-Harris administration when she was asked by Peter Doocy about the vice president's lack of accessibility in recent weeks and whether she's tired of answering questions on behalf of the vice president as well. And South Carolina Senator Josh Kimbrell catches up with us for his response on the latest developments of the 2024 campaign season and a preview of legislation he'll be proposing in the 2025 legislative session. Let's start with President Donald Trump in Asheville, North Carolina, just up the road from my hometown in upstate South Carolina, as he spoke to a very large and enthusiastic crowd.
From today and from the day I take the oath of office, we will rapidly drive prices down and make America affordable again. We're going to make it affordable again. When I left office, I handed Kamala and crooked Joe Biden a surging economy with no inflation. The 30-year mortgage rate was 2.4%. Gasoline had reached $1.87 a gallon, and for periods of time was even lower than that. The African-American poverty rate was down 7%. The Hispanic American poverty rate was down 8%. The biggest drops, the greatest drops that you've ever seen in this country. They've never had it so well. Nobody has. Every group, men, women, Hispanics, Asians, blacks, everybody was down at a level that nobody's ever seen. We had some of the greatest periods of economic growth and health that any country has ever seen. I think probably more than any country has ever seen. In 4 short years under President Trump, we passed the largest tax cuts in history, the largest regulation cuts in history. We unleashed American energy and real income surged by more than $4,200 in just a short number of months. I mean, it was nobody, you never had it so good. Now you're not doing so well, I hate it. We had the strongest economy in history. There's never been a country that had an economy like us. I gave Harris and Biden an economic miracle, and they quickly turned it into an economic nightmare with a nation-wrecking agenda ripped straight out of Kamala's San Francisco liberal playbook. What they've done to poor San Francisco. Well, we're gonna try and bring that back too.
I have one word of wisdom for President Trump: don't overpromise on San Francisco. That's a pretty tall task. Donald Trump offering massive tax cuts as he was speaking to this group in North Carolina yesterday. Of course, talking with voters about no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. As you looked at the backdrop, and this was a brand new backdrop as opposed to the ones I've seen in the past. It's a step and repeat type backdrop with no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, just repeated, big banners in the back as well. He spelled out some of his economic plans for service workers. Again, no tax on tips. An estimated price tag on that, $250 billion a year. For seniors, no taxes on Social Security. Estimated price tags around $150 billion a year on that, according to Axios. For people who want lower bills, Trump says that he's going to cut the price of electricity in half. The U.S. is the world's leading oil producer. The Trump tax cuts will be extended, he says. They are set to expire at the end of this year. The Democrats have already promised not to renew those tax cuts, which means our tax bill, yours and mine, is going to hit us pretty hard next year if we don't get Trump back in so that they can be extended. Trump understands that in order to fuel an economy, you've got to put money back in the pockets of Americans, average Americans, and business people so that they can reinvest into our economy. He spent a great deal of his time yesterday in Asheville talking about how he plans to do that.
So to get to economic relief to workers and families, we will make additional tax cuts. That's what gave us the great economy. We'll make tax cuts additionally. We'll make them permanent because, you know, we have a thing where they want to terminate at the end of the period when they expire, the Trump tax cuts. 5 years, they want to let them expire. That would mean your taxes would go up 4 times. You'll be paying 4 times much. And we will do something else which was copied, viciously, ruthlessly copied. No tax on tips, okay? No tax on tips. You know, if they wanted to do that, why didn't they do it 3.5 years ago? They didn't want to. It was actually the opposite. They hired 88,000 IRS agents to go after these people. So for every position the fake new Kamala takes down, and all of these positions 3 weeks ago, the real Kamala said the exact opposite. The exact opposite. With me, you will always have a president who tells it like it is. You will always have somebody where I let you know where I stand, and you can vote for me or not, but you need that, and you need consistency, and you need brilliance. You need brilliance. She is not a brilliant person. She is not a smart person. She is not very smart. But it is crazy, isn't it, though? Isn't it crazy? She was so disrespected just a few weeks ago, and now it's like, Kamala, Kamala. The fake news. The fake news is a threat to our country. Don't kid yourself. To help seniors on fixed incomes who are suffering the ravages of inflation, there will be no tax on Social Security. We're going to stop it. No tax on Social Security.
According to the latest Fox News poll, that message is resonating with Americans. The economy is clearly the top priority for voters as we head into the November general election. 38% telling Fox News that it will be the most important issue in their vote for president in November. Next comes immigration and then abortion, tied at 14% each, with all other issues tested in single digits. By a 6-point margin, more voters trust Trump to handle the economy than Kamala Harris. He had double-digit leads over Biden on the economy in 3 of the last 4 Fox News surveys. Voters also give Trump the nod on handling border security by 19 points, immigration by 14 points, foreign policy up 7%, and crime, people trust Trump 5 points better than they do Democrat Kamala Harris to solve our crime issue. Harris is seen as a better climate change candidate by 18 percentage points, but that's a badge of honor for Trump there. He doesn't pretend to be the candidate of climate change. She does better in abortion than he does, another non-surprise, by 16%, because we know what Kamala Harris's stance on abortion is. Neither candidate has a clear advantage on gun policy, which is a little surprising for me from Trump's standpoint, or the Supreme Court nominations, although most Republicans believe that Donald Trump will be able to build on the conservative majority that we have on the court today. no matter how many major events, and look, we've had a number of those in the last several weeks. I mean, think about it. Just in the last month, Trump is almost assassinated. Joe Biden decides to drop out of the race. Kamala Harris is anointed by the powers that be within the Democrat Party. She named her vice presidential running mate, and Americans are now starting to understand what's at stake here. So Fox News' latest poll, what does it show? It shows a dead heat still. Kamala Harris is pretty much taken on the same support that Joe Biden had. She trails Donald Trump by 1 percentage point, according to the Fox News poll. Kamala Harris has 49% to Donald Trump's 50%. Last month, she was also behind Trump by 1 point, as was Joe Biden prior to him announcing that he would drop out. Between those two surveys, again, there was an assassination attempt on Trump. The Republican National Convention was held. We learned that J.D. Vance would be Trump's running mate. And as I mentioned, of course, Joe Biden dropped out of the race. But again, there's a lot that's going to happen between now and November. So how much are these polls worth? We'll see. Hope you'll join the conversation today. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Send your comments to the Furman Ford text line. You can leave a quick voice message, and your emails are always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Soon going to be 4 years ago that I started my journey with PhD weight loss and nutrition. I lost 30 pounds pretty quickly, I might add, and I've been able to maintain that for almost 4 years now. It'll be 4 years coming up in July. If this is the year that you have decided that you're going to get healthy, that you're going to lose that weight, that visceral fat that's so damaging around your waist, then now's the time to start. Let me encourage you to make that call today. 864-252-4925. Set up your initial consultation with PhD Weight Loss and Nutritionist. Boy, am I glad that I met Dr. Ashley Lucas 4 years ago and that she got me on the right path to getting healthy. You're going to be able to do things that you may have thought you'd never be able to do again. Play with the kids, the grandkids, be able to hike and walk and maybe play a full 18-round hole of golf and be able to do it and not get so winded. Because when you take that excess weight off, you're just going to feel better. You're going to be able to focus. You're going to be able to sleep better. Your overall health is just going to be improved. 864-252-4925. Call, set up your initial consultation. Find them online at myphdweightloss.com. PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition, the official partner of the Clemson Tigers. On our guest line, South Carolina Senator Josh Kimbrell. Welcome. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, Joey. Good to be with you. I hope you're doing well.
I am doing wonderful. It's been a while since we last talked. There was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. He named Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as his running mate. The two of them officially received the nomination at the RNC in Milwaukee. The airline's practically closed down because of a software issue, stranding many of us at the RNC. Thought I was going to have to call you, Senator, to come pick me up.
We were ready to come get you, you know.
Joe Biden dropped out. Kamala Harris rallied the troops and chose Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. And finally, on Monday night of this week, Trump sat down with Elon Musk for a couple of hours, and now over 1 billion people have interacted in some way. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is hiding from the press. Did I cover it all? I mean, you know, there's been a lot going on for the last few weeks.
It's been a wild few weeks, and that summarizes it pretty well. I think maybe you could cram one or two more things in there, but that's about right. It feels like we live in warp speed now, and the closest comparison that I can think of historically to the moment we're in right now politically is really the 1968 convention times between the Republican and Democrat conventions back then, and riots and people up in arms and total disarray in the Democratic Party particularly. And it feels a lot like that. It's kind of like history is repeating itself.
Yeah. Speaking of the Democrat convention coming up in Chicago, I mean, what's your prediction there? I mean, there was conversation and suggestion that we would see riots at the RNC in Milwaukee. Either they kept them so far away that we couldn't see protesters, or there just wasn't the protesters show up like people were predicting. Now they're doing the same thing, predicting there's going to be protesters in Chicago. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a pretty good possibility of it. It's mostly because the Democrats have coddled and appeased these radical anti-Israeli, pro-Palestinian Hamas protesters and rioters that I'm afraid probably they might see more frustration than even the Republicans saw because of exactly the fact that they try to coddle them and then try to straddle the fence. You know what I think may happen, though, Joey, and what's going to be interesting about this is that a lot of people say Biden is still not happy at how he got pushed out. He's not happy about Kamala Harris being basically coronated. And even yesterday, I think it was yesterday, he basically blamed her or basically said she was responsible for the economy. It's like you almost wonder if that's an unforced error on his part or he's really frustrated enough to sort of smoke signal to people that, hey, this woman's been by my side. If you can blame me for stuff, blame her. Yeah. It makes you wonder if there's more fireworks over this than people think, because it is unusual that a major party nominee would avoid the press for a month after becoming the nominee. It's amazing. It's never happened in American history to be so lacking in transparency and so unwilling to engage in the process. It's like they're trying to keep her away from the press because they know the more she talks, the worse it gets.
Yep. Well, it's similar to how Biden did. Of course, he had the excuse of COVID for his cover, but she doesn't have that excuse. But and you're right. You know, even Karine Jean-Pierre earlier this week made it very clear. She went out of her way to make it clear that that Kamala Harris had been by his side throughout this administration. In fact, the term she used was there's no daylight between Biden and Kamala. It's almost like she wants everyone to know that Kamala has been a major part of this administration.
Well, it's funny to watch that. You're exactly right. I mean, so Kamala Harris keeps trying to open some daylight between them and pull away from the pack, and they're just grabbing her arm and pulling her back over and saying, no, honey, you're here with us. Yeah. You do wonder about that. And look, this is what happens there is going to have ramifications here. In South Carolina, it's obviously we're going to be a red state. We're going to be a Trump state here in our state. But one of the things we're interested in seeing is that there's a really significant possibility that we take an already Republican legislature, in particular the Senate, and make it even a greater supermajority if the coattails are there. Yeah. And we're watching the race pretty carefully because there's going to be, not only in states like ours, but states like North Carolina and Virginia, this race is going to be dynamic in a way we haven't seen the last several cycles. And really, Donald Trump could very much expand the map if he stays on message. Yeah. And that's going to be the key, staying on message. Don't take the bait with the identity politics. Don't take the bait with all the let's make it personal about Kamala Harris, because they want him to do that. Yeah. The more he engages in that, the less it's about the issues. And they want to make this a character debate. They want to make this about identity politics, not the fact the border's open, the economy sucks, and this administration has made America less safe. We need to keep driving that message home between now and November.
Yeah. On our guest line, South Carolina Senator Josh Kimbrell. Let's talk about the November elections and that coattail effect and the South Carolina legislature. You mentioned there's a good chance that we can build on those majorities. Give us your forecast. Look in your crystal ball there, Senator Josh Kimbrell, and tell us what you hope could happen in November.
Well, I will tell you that in terms of the Senate, we already have a 30 out of 46 seats. This is pretty close to supermajority now that are Republican. What I predict happens if Donald Trump's numbers hold and he continues to stay on this message, there's probably at least 2 seats that are in play right now that will flip from Democrat to Republican, maybe 3, which means now we go to a 33-seat majority, and that's pretty much filibuster-proof. That's pretty much it's definitely veto-proof. It's going to be the strongest Republican majority the Senate has ever had. And I think you see, even in the numbers of people who lost primaries, the state Senate's already moved to the right. So we were more conservative after the 2020 elections. We got more done than we had ever done for conservative causes in the last 4 years. I expect the Senate's already moved to the right now just after the primaries, and will be even more conservative after the November elections. It's been a fascinating thing to watch because we've always been a red state. For all my life, we've been a red state. Yeah. But now we're becoming a conservative state, which is different because we were a red state, but not always could we govern that way because of the way the rules were. Now we're starting to see that red state status turn into conservative legislation. That's pretty exciting. Yeah.
We have about a minute left, Senator. Speaking of the legislature, what are some of the key issues you hope to be working on looking forward to next year's session?
Well, let me just tell you the one we got to work on right now since school's back in, and everybody needs to pay attention to this. U.S. Department of Education has decided to issue a memo saying that every school in the country should allow for basically a transgender bathroom policy and basically men and girls sports. And those two things we outlawed in South Carolina. We have two laws on the books we've passed in the last year and a half to prohibit biological males from competing against females in sports, and to prevent this transgender bathroom policy, gender-neutral bathroom policy. And yet the Department of Education decided, you know what, we're just going to issue an email and basically try to trump state law in all these states across the country that have done this. Our state superintendent stood by the legislature and told our schools, hey, the legislature's your boss on this.
Yeah.
Don't do it because that doesn't have the force of law. And the School Board Association came out and said, well, you all do what you feel like. I tell you what, there are going to be consequences if school districts in this state ignore state law and go along with the memo from Washington that has no force of law. There are going to have to be some consequences, and stay tuned to that.
Wow, and we certainly will be monitoring that for sure. South Carolina Senator Josh Kimbrell, it's always a pleasure. Appreciate your time today, and we'll catch up again soon.
Good to be with you, Joey. Thank you.
Sure thing. Whether you're replacing a broken appliance or maybe you're just upgrading, you're totally remodeling the kitchen, when it's time to get those new appliances, when you're ready for them, you don't want to have to wait weeks or even months to get started using them, right? Well, that's not the case when you shop with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. With over 11,000 square feet and 1,500 appliances at any given time, you can buy today and use today quite often. I'm talking about shopping with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse in Pickens. It's worth the short drive over to Pickens. Jeff, Johnny, Kyle, the whole team over there, they'll take good care of you. They have an award-winning service department, expert installation, extended warranties, and at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they treat you like family. You're more than just a credit card swipe to all the team over there. Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they're proud to offer Speed Queen, the only washer and dryers with manufacturer's warranties that cover parts and labor. You owe it to yourself, if you're looking for a new appliance, to head over to Pickens to Discounted Appliance Warehouse online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. One quick thing before we talk about this story out of Ferguson, Missouri. Interesting post from Franklin Graham yesterday. He writes, the liberals are using anything and everything they can to promote candidate Harris. They even developed a political ad trying to use my father, Billy Graham's image to help promote her, or rather to try to make Donald J. Trump look bad. They're trying to mislead people. Maybe they don't know that my father was a firm supporter of President Trump in 2016. He appreciated the conservative values and policies of President Trump, and if he were alive today, my father's views and opinions would not have changed. President Trump isn't perfect. None of us are. But I believe he has changed over the years. This recent assassination attempt has had a huge impact on him, and I thank God that his life was spared. You know, Franklin Graham also spoke at the Republican National Convention a few weeks ago and just brought the house down, if you missed it, showing his support of Donald Trump and talking about speaking with Trump after the assassination attempt. And many people who are close to Trump say that as one would expect, has had a profound impact on Donald Trump's life. New graphic videos released showing the moment a Ferguson, Missouri police officer was violently knocked over by a suspect during a Michael Brown protest on Friday, an incident that has left the officer in critical condition and fighting for his life.
Hey, cut that way. Cut that way. Cut that way.
That's just a portion of the graphic video from a cam from a police officer that shows what happened that night. The protest was just 10 days, of course, before the Democratic National Convention, and among those arrested was Keith Rose, a St. Louis alternate delegate to the Democrat National Convention and a member of the City of St. Louis's Civilian Oversight Board, which reviews allegations of police conduct, or misconduct, I should say. The new videos, taken from two different angles, show that Ferguson police officer Travis Brown, who's a black man, by the way, apparently being hit by 28-year-old suspect Elijah Gant on a sidewalk outside a police station after protesters attempted to pull down a perimeter fence. Police say that Brown is fighting for his life after being critically injured in an assault during that protest on the 10th anniversary of the fatal shooting of Michael Brown. This newly released video Part was taken from a closed-circuit TV, a security camera close by, another from a police officer's body cam. It was played at a news conference yesterday, and it shows the suspect had a running start when he ran down the officer whose head violently struck the pavement. Officer Brown was unconscious and prone on his back with the suspect lying on his chest as you see other officers arriving, jumping on the suspect, trying to get him off of Officer Brown. Brown, who has twin daughters, suffered a severe brain injury after hitting his head during the fall. Police Chief Troy Doyle said during a news conference, quote, "I think it's a clear indication that my officer was charged and was hit violently by this individual. If you look at the video, the officer is standing up, waiting to catch this guy. This guy tackled my guy like he's a football player." Many of the 150 or so people who attended yesterday's news conference in support of the police, including at least 36 police officers themselves, mayors from several St. Louis area cities, were literally, you could see their face as they watched this video for the first time themselves. And you could see the shock on their face of how violent this was. Gant, who lives in East St. Louis, Illinois, was already charged with assault and is facing new assault charges for allegedly kicking another officer in the head, St. Louis County Prosecutor Wesley Bell said. Gant is in jail on a $500,000 cash-only bond right now as we speak. Protesters were peaceful, they said, through most of Friday. Police allowed them to block streets outside of the station. Chief Doyle said that police also didn't intervene when protesters began shaking a fence outside of the station. Now, see, this is what happens when you give them too much. We have become so sensitive to protesters and interrupting their right to protest that we let them get too far, then they're out of hand too quick. This... And it's easy for me to sit here as I'm sitting in a studio in front of a microphone. It's easy for me to say what I would have done, but I just think that maybe this should have been stopped long before it got to this point. Before they start tearing down a police barricade, a fence, they should have been pushed back. Chief Doyle said that when protesters broke the fence, destroyed property on police grounds, that's when he sent out an arrest team, and that's when things got tough. That's when things got out of hand. This arrest team included Officer Brown. Again, he's a black man. He's a black officer. Mr. Rose, the Democrat National Convention delegate, is accused of kicking in part of a metal gate outside of Ferguson Police Department. During this protest, he's now charged with first-degree property damage. He's free on a $500 bond, according to Fox 2. His attorney labeled the charges as bogus and said that Mr. Rose was not involved in damaging the fence. Although, according to in a news conference, video shows otherwise. Officer Brown started with the department in January. He previously worked for the St. Louis County Police Department, according to Police Chief Doyle. He's part of a wave of black officers who have been hired into the department since 2014. Back then, there were just 3 black police officers in the department. And you may recall how much criticism they came under during the whole Ferguson episode. Black officers now, though, make up more than a half of the police force, according to the chief. Chief Doyle said that Officer Brown wanted to be part of the change. He wanted to make an impact in our community. He's the type of officer that we want in our community. And what happens? He gets assaulted. I had to look his mother in the eye and tell her what happened to her son. I'm never going to do that again. I promise you that. And it is a bit ironic, isn't it? That Ferguson is almost torn down, burned down. Now they've tried to fix the problem. And back then, it was so racially motivated. The police department was criticized because they didn't have black officers. So now they've recruited black officers, and the black officers are being attacked. Officer Brown's family released a statement praising first responders and thanking the public for the outpouring of support that they've received. They've also asked for people's continued prayer, which, based on the reports, what we know now, he needs our prayer. The family said, "We're holding on to hope and trusting in the power of faith to see him through this difficult time. Travis is more than a police officer. He's a devoted father, son, brother, uncle, godfather, and friend. A man of strong faith. His heart is as big as his smile, and his positive energy is truly contagious. TJ is also an athlete, an adventurer, a lover of movies, and so much more. We know he is determined to continue living life to the fullest once he has recovered." The violence that resulted in Officer Brown's injury drew an angry response from Chief Doyle and from several people in Ferguson, a community of about 18,000, where roughly two-thirds of residents are black. Many wondered what protesters were so angry about, given the positive changes in Ferguson over the past decade since the Michael Brown episode. Chief Doyle said, "Let's recognize the good that has taken place in our police department. Let's recognize the reform." But see, that's the problem. Some of these people, they don't want to recognize the reform. They're never going to feel like there's been any progress. They're always going to play the race card, whether it's fair or not. Again, the chief went through the demographics since 2014, when the Ferguson department had around 50 white officers and 3 black officers. Today, 22 of the 41 officers are black, including Travis Brown, who's in the hospital now, fighting for his life. The chief said officers are trained in crisis intervention, avoiding bias, and that Chief Doyle said that he even changed the look of uniforms after residents said that the old look was triggering. So they were triggered by the police uniforms. And again, my response to that's part of the problem. If people are that sensitive that they're triggered by the look of a police uniform, we're coddling to them too much. According to the police chief, 2 other officers were also hurt, one sustaining an ankle injury, another just a minor cut that they'll both be fine. They were treated at the scene. As you recall, Michael Brown's death led to massive demonstrations that really was the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement in Ferguson, Missouri. In 2015, the Justice Department declined to charge Darren Wilson, the officer who shot Michael Brown, but released a highly critical report that noted racial bias in the Ferguson Police Department and the county courts. And again, they've gone a long way, I would say, to correct that. But it's still not enough. It's still not enough for these militant activists in their community. The DNC, according to Fox News, did not comment when they were asked about this delegate. You think the DNC is going to take action? You think they'll revoke his credentials? Hope you'll join the conversation today. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Send your comments to the Furman Ford text line. You can leave a quick voice message, and your emails are always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at FurmanFord.com, FurmanFord.com. On the text line, Tony writes, Joey, Susan Smith should never be released from prison, but is up for parole in November. She is a disgusting individual. This is in response, and many of you responded to the story I talked with you about on yesterday's show about convicted murderer. She murdered her 2 kids, Susan Smith, when she strapped them into their car seats and let her car roll into a lake in Union County and let those two poor boys drown. What a horrible death that was for these two young, innocent kids. She killed her own kids. She blamed it on a black man. She said that she had been hijacked and that her kids were kidnapped by a black man, and for like 2 weeks, local authorities searched for this black man. She gave a description and everything. She and her husband would appear on the local news at night pleading for the return of her children, knowing that they were in the bottom of the lake. Many of you responded when I asked you yesterday, should she get parole? She's coming up for parole later this year. And evidently she has some boyfriends whom are encouraging her release and whom she has stayed in constant contact. Evidently she has a lot of boyfriends, according to prison records. She has a lot of phone calls and a lot of text messages from these men. I'm sure she's lining up her financial support for if and when she's released. Christy says Susan Smith should only be out of prison to be strapped in the back seat of a van, rolled down the ramp of John D. Long Lake to the fate she deserved a long time ago. She's been a waste of oxygen for years. Tell me what you really think there, Christy. Dan writes, Susan Smith's drowning of her boys reminds us what is done with abortion. When you think about it, it makes the idea of abortion more real. It is both killing a pure little one. And you're right, Dan. Jeff writes, she deserves to be waterboarded to death. Texter, Joey at 58, that guy should get a golden retriever. They are way more loyal than an incarcerated woman. He's talking about one particular guy who has cut off all communication with Susan Smith when he found out how many other boyfriend she has outside. So the texter suggesting he gets a golden retriever instead. Texter, they should have strapped Smith years ago into a car and ran it into the lake. You know, many of you, that's a common theme. Many of you think she should get the same that she gave to her two innocent young boys. Texter, Joey, let her out, strap her in a car, roll into a really deep lake, and leave her there. On the text line, hey, Joey, the Susan Smith stuff I remember well. I drove a truck for Winn-Dixie, and they both worked at the Winn-Dixie store in Union, and I remember all the signs put up at the warehouse looking for them in the car. I'd forgotten about that, but you're right. They did, Susan Smith and her husband at the time. I mean, this is a young couple with two young children. And you're right. I do remember that now. They both worked at Winn-Dixie there in Union. Texter, what Susan Smith did is called the black experience in America. A white woman could always holler rape and say it has been a black man. In this case, it was a kidnapping. Law enforcement looking for a black man with a stocking cap that never existed. Hell yeah, keep her in jail. Texter, Joey, about Susan Smith. The word correctional institute used instead of a prison. Yeah, you're right. They did call it a correctional institute. When did that begin? Seems as it must be one of those liberal ideas to not put labels on people because they might be offended. Are they prisoners? If not, they must be correctional institute occupants. Point well taken. And I got many other comments, emails about the whole Susan Smith saga because, you're very passionate about that. One email said she needs to spend the rest of her living days in jail, strapped in a car seat with her hands behind her back so she cannot talk to anyone to even try to chat. Good luck eating. Moving on to another subject. Texter says, Joey, don't forget the news article Newsweek ran when Donald Trump proposed no tax on tips, that we would lose $3.5 billion in tax revenue over 10 years. Then when Kamala Harris proposes it, they ran an article supporting it. Well, what do you expect from Newsweek? And what do you expect really from any of the mainstream media? But you're right. They when Trump proposed it, when it was his idea, they wanted to look for reasons why it couldn't work. Now Kamala Harris proposes it. And they're forgetting the fact that Kamala Harris was part of the Biden administration who wanted $80 billion for additional IRS enforcement. A couple of you sent me links to an article in Breitbart, and maybe we'll get to that one day, where Breitbart really breaks down what the Biden administration is trying to do with the IRS, and part of that is to have more enforcement of people who receive tips, because quite often those can be cash. And the IRS wants more agents, and the Biden administration wants them to have more agents so that they can have people to investigate people who are receiving tips as part of their pay. But now Kamala Harris thinks, they shouldn't even pay tax on those tips. It'd certainly be a lot easier for sure. Texter, no, this is an email. Hey, Joey, here's a talking point for you. When did the First Amendment become a Republican Party issue? Because it has. There's a recent European warning to Musk on X over the Trump interview. Then let's look at Walz's comments on the subject. He strongly believes there should be restrictions and has said so. Don't forget, Walz suspended the Minnesota legislature for 15 months, ruled by fiat, and established a snitch line. You know, Tim Walz was just a horror during COVID. There's a story about a grandmother who literally lost her business because she opened in defying his orders to be closed, and he sent her to prison. Because of his strict restrictions, this grandmother went to prison because she reopened her business. She lost her business. She's lost everything. She's speaking out now because she wants us to know that we don't want him as our vice president, because what he did to Minnesotans, he'll do to all Americans. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Just click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, find me on YouTube. Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on my YouTube channel. Just search for Joey Hudson. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me. Be sure and forward this edition of Just the Truth to some friends. Just click on the share button. Send it to a few of your contacts, because if we're going to build our community and if we're going to win in November, we got to build an army of conservatives. The way we beat Joe Biden is through educating people, and no better way than encouraging them to listen to Just the Truth. Hey, keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your emails always welcome as well. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Don't forget to take advantage of the MyPillow special, $25 for the My Towels 6-piece towel set when you use promo code Joey. Just go to MyPillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. We're back again tomorrow. Hope you will be too. Remember, God's got this. He's still in control.